Hello, beautiful souls out there. I hope you're able to get out in nature like Starlight was. And I'm in here for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a little cool. I would have to wear my jacket on, and I don't want to wear my jacket to make a video. And my battery, my phone is plugged in because it needs to get charged. And I don't want to take a chance of having the video just end, in the middle of editing. So anyway, I love you so much, and I hope you're getting out like Starlight was. And if you are new to my YouTube channel, welcome. And you can find me on YouTube, and that is at Starlight, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman. Plus, you can give my videos a thumbs up. Thank you. Someone out there, I don't know who it is, but thank you. It might be the same person, or it might be different people, but thank you for giving my videos a thumbs up. Because I create really good, helpful videos to help people out in life with their families or life in itself. So thank you, and thank you for the people that leave me a comment, and thank you for the ones that just recently subscribed to my YouTube channel, because Starlight has been meeting a lot of people out in this area all over. And I do have to say before I start, if you're new or you've been around for a while, is I am so sorry. Some crazy thing happened in my YouTube channel, and I don't know how long it has been happening. When I look at my YouTube channel, everything looks perfect, but when I search my own YouTube channel on YouTube, or actually I found this out is that when I tell people about my YouTube channel, I'm telling them how to find me, and I will pop up on their screen, and then I can see the videos underneath, and I'm like, oh, what happened? So my thumbnails are off a lot of my videos, so Starlight has got to figure this out. So I'm so sorry that you're seeing pictures of the middle of the video instead of a thumbnail like it should be. So anyway, I am sorry about that, and that is something I gotta figure out. I've been working on that. And also thank you, like I was saying, thank you for all of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel, or even people who share my videos. Thank you so much for sharing my videos. Plus, you can also check out my playlist and find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. And again, thank you, all of you who are there loving and supporting Starlight, sending me messages or giving me a thumbs up or subscribing to my YouTube channel. And most of you on my YouTube channel, more than likely, I met you in person somewhere in the United States. So thank you so much for all of you. And also, if any of you would love to share a picture of your pet, not your kids, not your husband or wife either. Are they your pet? What kind of funky name do you have for Starlight's just being funny, because, couples do have cute little names for their loved ones. So Starlight is just being funny because sometimes people do call their kids animals, and, maybe they're love partner, whether it's a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, you might have like cute little names, and but you could share any little like a picture of your pet. You have an alligator, yes, you could share, I don't know what do you feed your alligator, you could send me a picture of your pet alligator. Or frogs, you got frogs, yes, ribbit. Yes, you could share, send those to me, and you can do that by sending those on my Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. So, and also any little short little videos, Starlight would love to see those. You can let me know what your pet's name is, any information that you want to share. I love animals. If you would ever like to connect with me on Instagram, we can talk about animals, because Starlight can talk your ear off. So anyway, I love you so much. And so today's video is about you. Yeah, you. And you, 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 and you. You are doing better than you think. And I'll tell you what, we all can be guilty of this. at times, many times in our life, because the way we were brought up. It might be the way you were brought up, you know? Like we all got a background. Some of you have a beautiful childhood. Some of you have like a nightmare of a childhood, like ah, yes, some of you do have those kind of childhoods, backgrounds. So depending on where you came from as far as your family goes, hang on, I gotta. Whoop. Yeah, so that's where the start of everything happens is, from that point on all the way through, even before mommy and daddy decided, hey, let's have a baby tonight. So how did that happen? We don't want to go there. So anyway, because a lot of times, all the time actually is your parents, my parents, they might not have gotten the right upbringing themselves, So it could be really challenging for children who turn into adults and then they have their own kids. And that is why a lot of things are going on in the world, because we all didn't get educated the same way. We didn't have the same parents, the same education. You could have came from a family, that didn't have education, all kinds of stuff, disabilities. There's a lot of people who have families that have disabilities, or they could have been a family that didn't get brought up by their parents because there's a lot of things why, sometimes people were not meant to be parents, but they had babies. That happens more, out there a lot, unplanned pregnancies, and so my heart goes out to any of you, or, like all of you who has gone through a hard time with your childhood, with your family, and and it is sad. So a lot of times when we're brought up in conditions where they didn't know what they were doing, or they could have been intoxicated, with drugs or alcohol or anything, under the sun, of why they weren't there for you. You could have been neglected as a child, and wasn't being brought up in a way that you would like to been brought up. But no matter what kind of background you came from, is, we all have lessons, starting when mommy and daddy decided, hey, let's have a baby. From that point, depending on what your parents were like, were they the kind of people that did everything to, like the mommy, did you have the kind of mommy that was eating healthy and doing everything to make sure to have a healthy baby? Not every mother does that. So it does start right when mom, and it does have a lot to do with both parents, but mainly the mother in this, because she's the one that's going to be carrying the child, is, it all starts from all the way back then, how things happen, and how, when you come into this world, how you were brought up, and depending on your parents, so there's times we come from parents that didn't have the proper education, or could have gotten mixed up in something while having a child. So no matter where you came from, no matter what kind of background, when you experience those things when you were a child, those are hard lessons to learn, the do's and don'ts of when you have your own children, and so some people learn their lessons and some people don't. So with that is, a lot of times, you could get brought up by a parent that really didn't know what they were doing, or might have neglected you where they weren't even around, and you could have gotten treated in such a way that you never felt like you were good enough, like you never, you could done everything that, what child doesn't want to try to, get attention by their parents by doing something great? That's why it's so important to, reward your kids, pay attention to them when they do something right. Pay more attention to when they do things right than when they do wrong. You can get them confused, by paying more attention, because if they're getting more attention because they're messing up, they might want to do more things because they're getting your attention. So it is so wise, to make sure you have balance, with that. But you really want to focus more on when they're doing things right, and not to reward them every single time, because they need to understand that just because you did something good, that just like as an adult, it don't mean because you did something good today that you're going to get rewarded right after. That's how the universe is. That's how God is. There's times that God sees everything that we do, but there's times that God wants to see how you're going to do in other areas, and then, reward you when you least expect it. So those are good things that you could do with your kids is, like when they have a birthday, is to, of course, those are times that they're going to expect something, but like even an off day or something where, you could surprise them and say, you know what, I've been watching you and you've been really, doing good. Like you've been doing good on your grades in school. I've been noticing changes. You always want to praise your kids when you see that they're doing good, instead of yelling at them all the time of what they're doing wrong, because this is how you can fix, things that have been passed down through generation after generation, by parents that didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they got mixed up with alcohol or drugs, because that could happen to any of us. So you got to forgive those people no matter how you got brought up, and understand that those are all lessons. And that I have to say, don't you learn the hard way? I know I have learned the hard way in my life, and the worst things that happened to me, or the things that I've done in my life that was not the right thing to do, those were hard lessons. They were painful, but you know what? It's one of those things when you messed up and it was painful, and those are things that you're not going to want to repeat again, because that is like, bam, you just get hit so hard. And, it might have taken you years to heal up from something by making a poor choice, like relationships, just jumping into a relationship, and having a very bad experience with that relationship by not thinking ahead of time and not really getting to know what you're getting yourself into. And because, when we're young, a lot of times it's over sexual desires, and, jumping into things too quick. Sorry, I got an itch here. So this video is to inspire you. You're doing better than you think. If you are every day giving your all every day, there's a lot of times that as long as you're doing your hardest every day, doing your best every day, there's a lot of times that we're going to feel at the end of the day that it wasn't good enough. That's what you got to let go of. I get messages from the universe, and the universe said, Starlight, you got to give yourself more credit. You're not really giving yourself enough credit look at where you are, and there's times that we can look at that and say, well, where am I? But there's so many levels to get to where you are, and people don't see it. That's the thing. You know the work that you're doing, even though nobody else does know the work that you're doing. And the sacrifices that you've put in, the discipline, being consistent, all these important things, that, you're like with me, I am listening to what God wants. Now it's not what I am letting go and letting God. And so with that, it takes a lot of discipline. It's saying, I just did this the other day. I'm like, God, I want to serve and wherever you send me. And so, I felt like I was being tested by God to help some people out at a park. And you know what? Maybe God didn't want me to do that, but I was, I didn't want to take that chance. I'm like, I'm here to serve, people right in public, anywhere, if anybody needs help. And, there was a lady that I believe, she does need help. So, it'd be better for me to just try to be of service to help someone else than to just go on my merry way and just think about myself, because God's going to see my heart. God's going to say, wow, you know what? she could have gone and did this, but no, she actually, really believed I wanted her, her to do this, whether I was right or wrong. It's just, we got the tendency, because depending on where we came from, if you heard more about the negative things that you did when you were growing up, always hearing, about how bad you were and how you were always messing up, versus having that balance of being rewarded when you're doing good. When you become an adult, guess what? You might think that you're not good enough, because that's, you could have gone through a childhood like that where, no matter what you did, you didn't get praised enough, you didn't get rewarded for when you did good. So, even if nobody else recognizes the work that you're doing, the work that you're doing. And there's so many levels to the kind of work that we do on an everyday basis. It's a 24/7, every day of the week is working on yourself, from, the time that you wake up, you got all kinds of choices that you can do or cannot, you don't have to do. And it's all different stuff. You have a choice in the morning, like say if you don't have to go to work, you have a choice. First thing you wake up, are you going to get right up? Or are you going to lay in bed for hours and let the whole morning go by? When you wake up, you have a choice. You could wake up and spend time with God, do some journaling, read a book, take a jog, go out in a park, go take a walk, have your cup of coffee somewhere and read a book or something like that. Or you have the choice of waking up and going right to the internet and answering, checking your phone. We're always, all these things, everything all through your day, you have choices on what kind of food you're going to eat. We're always, you might not realize this, but even the food that you have in your house, even when you go shopping, everything is a test. The more we get aligned with what God really wants in our life, the more you're going to see coming into your life, when you go shopping and, like a lot of times we're not really listening to what our intuition is saying, that inner voice. When you're shopping, when you have your grocery cart and you're shopping and you see these cookies and these donuts and there's this voice in your head that says, I know this is not good for me. So you have a choice. Okay, I can either put them in the cart, which is carrying what kind of emotions and feelings when you do that, when you know that this is not good for me. And, but you have that choice to either stick them in your cart or leave them right there and let somebody else buy them. Is those feelings and emotions, do you feel guilty when you're buying those things that that they're not good for you? Or, do you grab it and you don't feel guilty at all, and you just, you got so used to not feeling guilty. So, you could discipline yourself by saying, no, I don't want those cookies and donuts, or you could just do whatever you want and buy those cookies, when you know that really they're not good for you. I can't tell you what to eat or what not to eat. It's all up to you, how you behave out in public. We have choices on how we're going to respond to people when we go out in public, and how are you actually educating your kids? Are you, teaching them a good example of how to interact with people? I've actually met very, very few, when I say very, very few, a couple people that I actually met that actually I said hello to, because when I see kids and families, and now I'm saying hi to everyone, is that only a couple of people in my whole life I've ever witnessed this, and it's sad. So the mom said, oh, hello, and they actually looked down at their child, not that they were looking down at them, but they said, Sally, say hello. And then the little girl or the little boy, it could be a boy or a girl, and they were teaching, to be friendly. So, these are things how we're being tested all the time. But those are things that people don't know what we're really doing, you know? So anything that you decide, any decision, you got, you can do the left or the right choice, you got this choice or that choice. So there's so much involved. I could go all night, and talking about all the different decisions, like safety in a car, driving, how do you talk to your kids? How do you talk to your loved ones? Do you spend time, are you gossiping about your family? Are you talking about the people from your work? And are you, like sending bad messages? Are you, listening to the right kind of music? Are you watching the right kind of things that are healthy for you? All these choices all the time. We always got things that we're dealing with on an everyday basis, all the time. Every day is going to be something different. You have the choice to go out in nature and get some air, or you can sit in your house, and not do anything. So, but think of all the things that nobody sees, and that you're working really hard and you're really disciplined, but nobody sees it. You got to give yourself a hand. You got to say, you know what? Nobody sees what I'm doing, but I'm doing better than I think I'm doing. If you're doing improvements, don't worry about trying to get other people's attention on how you're doing it. You got to know the work that you're doing. Hey, you know what? Today I did really good. When I woke up this morning, I got out of bed. This morning when I woke up, I brushed my teeth. When I went to the public bathroom, ladies, I squatted over the seat and I wiped up my mess. Men, when you went to the public bathroom or in the house, you decided, you know what? I'm going to lift the toilet seat up, do my thing, and put the seat back down. All these little things, When I get done eating my food at the house, I'm going to put the plate in the sink and I'm going to rinse the stuff off so it doesn't get stuck on there so bad, And if you got a dishwasher, you're going to just, of course, Starlight's anti-dishwasher. I don't like dishwashers. But, however you do your dishes. So imagine all the little tiny things that you don't even really think about all through the day of the decisions every time all over, like about cleaning your house, you could wake up, and have your morning activity time, meditate, go out for a walk, go out, do sports or whatever, come home, start cleaning the house. Say, hey, the laundry's, it's time for me to do the laundry. That's a choice. Or you could just say, screw it. I'm just going to wait until it's so much laundry that I get stressed out another time over it. So think of all the little things, how about your pets? How are you with your pets? Do you treat your pets in a kind way? Because I'll tell you what, I see some stuff. That's when, like your kids and, I see some stuff I don't like. So are you treating your pets in a good way? Are you feeding them the right kind of stuff? Are you checking on if they should eat that or not? It's really important, because do you like a big bill from the veteran later on when your pet, which is like your family member, you didn't check, you just let the pet eat everything that was on your plate, and you found out later on that my dog is not supposed to be eating strawberries? You really got to check out on, really, is it good? What kind of dog do you have? Or cat? Should my cat be eating this? So we have choices all the time. So think of all this stuff. Tomorrow, you can hear me now as I'm talking about this. Give yourself a checklist, like the next day. And when you wake up, hey, I got out of bed early. I didn't, put it on snooze. I didn't throw my clothes on the floor in the bedroom. I actually took care of them. I hung, I put them in the dirty clothes, or like with me, if I was in my own place, a lot of times I'm only wearing like in this situation here, I could wear this for like 3 hours and then I got to change and put something else on. Should I throw it in the dirty clothes? Well, in my situation, it's different. But in a house, so it's all up to you what you do. So every time you really believe that you did the right decision by taking care of your stuff, and being grateful every day for everything that you have, thanking God, talking to God and saying, God, I'm grateful for everything I have. When you're saying, when you're asking for protection, when you're driving or praying about your kids, praying for their safety, all these things. It's a lot of things, I could go on and on and on because it's all kinds of stuff, like choices that you have. You could be that person that, when you go out hiking, you got a whole bunch of stuff in your bag, in the backpack, you got some food and munchies and all this and that. You got a choice. Are you going to throw your garbage on the ground? Or are you going to do the right thing, and when you bring it in, you take it back out and you put it in the trash where it belongs? You have a choice when you go in the public bathroom. Are you going to throw the toilet paper in the garbage can or in the toilet bowl? Or are you going to, throw it on the floor? We have choices all the time that we're making, all the time. When somebody snaps at you, you have a choice. When somebody is rude to you, you have a choice. You can ignore them, say God bless you, wish them well, or you could just go to their level and act foolish and just mimic what they just did. So think of all the positive things that you're doing every day. Every day. You will realize nobody sees all this stuff. God does. Give yourself a pat on the back. Let yourself know, you know what? I need to give myself credit. There's a lot of families out there that they don't know how, to give themselves credit because they came from a childhood where, it was always more attention on what they didn't do and how they were screwing up. They got more attention on things like that than they actually got attention on what they were doing right. So as an adult, when you become an adult, it would be so easy to work so hard and not to even give yourself a break and say you're doing better than you think. So I really hope you get a lot of help from this video. Think of all the, tomorrow after you watch this, as you do things like, hey, I did a good thing, Starlight. That I had the choice. I could have said hello to that man. I could have opened up the door for someone. I opened up the door and they smiled. I said, hey, I love your shirt. I am doing better than I think. I do need to give myself more credit than what I tell myself. So really focus more on the things that you're doing right than to focus on what you're doing wrong. Because it is so easy to focus on and say, oh, I didn't get that done in time, or I don't feel like I really got anything done today. Think of all the right choices that you made throughout the day and where you could have made the wrong choice. So I love you so much. This is Starlight. You could give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Plus, you can leave me a message down below. Beep, beep, beep. And you could share my videos with your family or friends. A donkey and a horse, of course. Plus, you can check out my playlist, and you can find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight, or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K, Dingman Starlight. I love you all. So stop looking at all the things that are not perfect. Look at what you're doing right. Look at all the hard work that you do every day. Look at how disciplined you are, how consistent you are, how patient you are. And if you're not all those things, those are things that we always can work on. I used to tell my boss this before. He gave me a lot of credit. I'm a good-ass worker. And I didn't want my ego getting to be my ego. So I said, there's always room for improvement. So don't beat yourself up. It's okay. Look at all the other areas that you're doing great at. So I love you so much. This is Starlight. Namaste. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace.